Some betrayals don't come with shouting or slam doors. They arrive smiling, wearing pearls, and whispering something sweet enough to poison a moment you thought was perfect. I didn't know my wedding night would be the stage for my mother's final lesson in control, but by the time she finished her sentence, every fairy light in that room felt like a lie. The music had softened into something that shimmered through the air, slow and elegant, the kind of song that makes you believe in peace for just a minute. Evan's hand was warm against mine, and I could still taste the faint sweetness of frosting on my thumb when my mother's perfume cut through it like static. She smiled that familiar smile, bright, polished, meant for audiences. The same smile that had survived every argument, every disappointment, every lie. I'd lived my whole life beneath that smile. "We're passing the car his parents gifted you to your sister," she said, like she was offering me a glass of water, like it wasn't theft dressed in generosity. The air didn't break. It folded. Somewhere behind her, glasses clinked, laughter stuttered, and I could feel my heart stop pretending it belonged in this family. Danielle tilted her head, sequins on her champagne dress winking under the lights. "Relax," she said softly, her voice dipped in sugar and arrogance. "It's just a car." Just a car. The car Evan's parents had handed me at the rehearsal dinner, the one they'd called a blessing, not a luxury. "You built this together," his father had said. "Here's something to help you move forward." The title in my name, signed like trust. Now my mother was turning it into a hand-me-down. And Danielle, as always, was the one receiving the inheritance of my effort. I looked at them, my mother's teeth, my sister's rehearsed sweetness, my father's quiet compliance sliding into the frame like a shadow. Behind them, Evan stood calm but alert, eyes meeting mine with that unspoken question. "Are you ready?" The music carried on, pretending nothing had happened, but the air had changed. There's a kind of silence that belongs only to weddings, a silence that hovers over laughter, coats the smiles, presses on your ribs until breathing feels performative. That silence came for me then. I remembered the first time I'd felt it. I was 8, holding a ruined homework sheet while Mom scolded me for leaving it on the shared table after Danielle had spilled nail polish remover across it. "She's younger, sweetie. You should have known better." I'd nodded then, the same way I was supposed to nod now. Except I didn't. Evan's fingers brushed the inside of my elbow, a whisper of support, and I inhaled, the frosting taste gone, replaced by something metallic and electric. My mother was still smiling, already moving on to polite chatter with an aunt who was pretending not to eavesdrop. I didn't interrupt her. I wanted her to feel comfortable. I wanted her to think she still owned the room. Because the thing about control is it only exists until someone refuses to play along. I slipped my fingers into my clutch. The envelope was there, slim, white, and heavy with something more powerful than permission. Paper that could end a cycle. Mom leaned closer again, lowering her voice as if confiding in me about a family secret. "You two can manage with one car for now," she said. "It's more practical. Danielle's been through so much with her old one." Practical. That word she loved. That excuse she always used to turn unfairness into strategy. I felt my pulse steady. "You're giving away our wedding gift," I said quietly. No accusation, just fact. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. "Don't make this a thing, Nova. It's just a car." I could hear my heartbeat between the notes of the song. My throat burned with 1,000 swallowed arguments from childhood. All the times I'd given in because it was easier. But tonight wasn't supposed to be another rehearsal in endurance. "You might want to check the envelope you gave us," I said, still calm, still smiling. It was empty. The silence cracked this time. My father's brows knit. Danielle's mouth fell open just enough to look offended but not ungraceful. "Wow," she said with a dry laugh. "You really think you're tough now?" I smiled too. A small, private smile meant only for her. The kind that said, "You have no idea what's coming." From somewhere behind the cake table, a phone camera lifted. Because of course it did. My family had always loved their performances, but this time, I had written the script. "Give me the envelope," I whispered to Evan. He didn't hesitate. That's what trust looks like. No explanations, just belief. His fingers brushed mine as he passed it to me. His palm warm, steady. My father reached for it, curiosity lighting his face. But I didn't let go. Not yet. For the first time in my life, I wanted them to wait for me. The first time I realized politeness could be a weapon, I was 11, and holding a box of my things while Danielle measured the wall for her new bookshelf in my old room. The tape measure snapped back with a cheerful zing while Mom stood in the doorway, palms together like she was praying to the god of good manners. "You're such a helper," she said to me, and I swallowed the question, burning my tongue. Why does helping always mean losing? They called it rearranging. They called it fair. They called me resilient, like it was a trophy I should polish on my own time. Danielle got the corner with the window and the tree that bloomed white in April. I got the smaller room facing the driveway where the trash bins lived. When I cried quietly into my pillow that night, Mom stroked my hair and told me what she'd repeat for the next 18 years. "You're strong, Nova. This is why I can count on you." People hear that sentence and think it's love. It's not. It's a transfer of labor with a bow on top. It started to rain memory in the ballroom. Not the wet kind, the heavy kind. The band smoothed over the moment, and guests looked anywhere but at us. But in my chest, old scenes came back with the precision of a courtroom transcript. I was 13 when Danielle borrowed my sweater, the deep green one I'd saved babysitting money to buy. She returned it snagged and pilled, and when I held it up like evidence, Mom smiled. Sharing gracefully is part of being a good big sister. Danielle kissed my cheek and said thank you, as if she'd done me a favor by ruining it. Dad folded his newspaper and said nothing. That was his specialty silence that validated whatever made the night easier for him. At 16, when Danielle backed into a mailbox and left a crescent moon dent in the family sedan, the weather was blamed. "Black ice," Dad said in May. The next month, I started extra shifts at the warehouse to buy a used hatchback that smelled like old coffee and possibility. I paid the registration myself. Mom called me independent. Danielle called me available. I learned the pattern. One daughter became a lesson, the other became the exception. By 22, I could translate my mother's tone the way you parse a foreign language. Practical meant, "You'll give this up and make it look generous." Family meant, "We're about to cross a boundary and dare you to name it." Kindness meant, silence. Whenever Danielle faltered, Mom's smile grew brighter, like stage lights covering a missed line. By 25, I had trouble telling the difference between patience and numbness. Tonight, in satin and sequins, the old choreography resumed like muscle memory. Mom leaned in with that fragrance I'd always associated with apologies I was expected to offer. "You two can manage with one car," she said, the word manage tied in a bow and placed neatly in my lap. Manage meant shrink. Manage meant disappear. Manage meant Danielle would be spared a consequence that might visit anyone else's daughter. I could feel the envelope against my palm, the edges a small reminder that some things in this life can be prepared for. It wasn't a trap. It was a tether, something to hold so I didn't float back into the role I'd outgrown. Evan shifted his stance a fraction to stand with me, not in front of me. He has a way of taking up space that makes more space for me instead of less. People don't talk about that kind of love enough. If you'd asked me 5 years ago what freedom looked like, I would have said money or vacations, or doors that opened when I pushed them. Now I know it looks like a notarized letter you write with shaking hands, because you finally understand that protection isn't meanness, it's care. I studied Mom's mouth when she told me not to make this a thing. She'd practiced that line in 100 forms: don't ruin the moment, don't make this bigger than it is, don't embarrass yourself, which all translate to the same instruction: stay small so we can stay comfortable. Danielle's giggle sharpened the edges of the room. She floated on that sound the way some people float on inherited money. "It's just a car," she said again, like a chorus, like a hook designed to make the crowd sing along. If it was just a car, why were they already acting like it was theirs to give? I didn't answer her. I answered the script instead. I let the quiet stretch until the song felt like thin ice. Guests pretended to talk while watching us in silverware reflections, and phone screens angled low. A cousin half raised a champagne flute, then hovered, waiting to see which direction the scene would tilt. There's a theater to family systems like ours, and even the extras know when to hold their breath. Under the frosting and perfume, I tasted metal. The envelope thudded in my pulse. I thought of the first night Evan and I planned all this. sitting at our tiny kitchen table beneath the humming fridge, the letterhead centered between our coffee mugs. "Are you sure?" he'd asked, not doubting me, just making space for me to take it back if fear wanted to dress up as strategy. "I'm sure," I'd said, though my voice trembled. He nodded and slid the paper toward me. "Then we make it official." Official, a word that once scared me because official meant unhideable. Tonight I needed unhideable. A string of lights flickered overhead, and I almost laughed. The room kept trying to pretend it was beautiful, and it was, but beauty without truth is just a costume. Mom straightened her shoulders the way she does before a photo, and Dad drifted closer, a human stop sign whose red had faded from too much sun. "You're giving away our wedding gift," I repeated evenly. The evenness was new for me. I used to perform calm by swallowing every word. Tonight, I performed calm by choosing the right ones. Mom's smile thinned. "Don't make this a thing," she said, again, "because when a spell cracks, you repeat it. Danielle's had such bad luck with cars. It will be more useful with her." Useful. There it was, the altar they'd always worshipped at. Do you know how hard it is to grow up as a function? You become a tool even to yourself. You measure worth in work you do for others and call it generosity so it doesn't sound like erasure. Useful is a cage with velvet bars. I looked at Danielle then, really looked. Beneath the gloss, there was a twitch just below her left eye, the kind stress leaves like a watermark. She needed everything. That's what happens when you never learn how to hold your own. I didn't hate her in that moment. I just refused to be her forever battery. "This is a wedding," Dad murmured finally, like a half-hearted referee arriving 2 rounds too late. "Let's not create drama." If drama is a story that insists on itself, then yes, we had arrived. But the drama wasn't mine, it was theirs. I was just refusing to cut my lines. The envelope warmed in my grip. I thought of the empty envelope they'd tucked into our gift table earlier. Pretty card. No check, no note. Just the shape of generosity without the substance. A joke to them. A rehearsal for tonight. They forget I've always been a good student. "You might want to check the envelope you gave us," I said. It was empty. Danielle's laugh thinned into something brittle. "You really think you're tough now?" It wasn't a question. It was a recalibration. She needed the crowd to decide I was mean so she could go back to being delicate. I let the accusation sit between us until it cooled. Tough used to mean I absorbed impact without flinching. Tonight it meant I redirected it. I eased the flap on my envelope with my thumbnail and felt the paper sigh. A tiny sound, but to me it was a hinge creaking on a door that had never opened before. Evan's gaze was steady on my profile. I didn't need to look to know. He knew the choreography too. I go first. He guards the edges. We don't abandon the plan just because the audience shifts in their seats. Someone near the cake whispered, "Is she serious?" I couldn't tell if they meant me or the bride I used to be. I answered both by standing taller. The mic on the bandstand caught a breath of static. Somewhere, a phone camera clicked. In a world like the one I grew up in, there are 2 kinds of daughters, the story and the scapegoat. The story gets told at holidays, the one about her wins, her charm, the way she lights up a room. The scapegoat gets told how to behave in the background so the story can keep shining. Tonight I decided I would be neither. I would be a narrator. I closed my clutch and rested the envelope on its lid like a seal. "We're going to finish our dance," I said, voice low, stable, the way you speak to a skittish animal. "And then we'll talk like adults who understand what belongs to whom." Mom's eyes flashed, the kindness mask slipping for a blink before she set it back on straight. "Don't threaten your sister," she murmured, smile reinstalled. "People are watching." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm speaking clearly." Danielle's mouth parted, a protest forming maybe the words "you owe me" remixed into something palatable. But the band swelled right then, and for a breath I let the music hold me up, not to escape. To remember who I am when I'm not being assigned. I stepped closer to Evan and felt his knuckles brush mine, our quiet signal. 1, 2, 3. I could hear the future breathing at the edges of the room, impatient and luminous. And maybe I was still that resilient girl, the one who could carry boxes and take smaller rooms and smile while swallowing the sour. But resilience had finally learned a second trick: refusal. I didn't open the envelope yet, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted them to experience the one feeling they'd always timed out of me: anticipation. Let them wonder what happens when the daughter who helps decides she's done enabling. Evan leaned in, not to guide me but to mirror me. "Ready?" he whispered, and I found that my answer lived somewhere below fear, in a place I'd been building quietly for years, brick by patient brick. "Yes," I said. "I am." There's a rhythm your heart learns when it's preparing for confrontation, half adrenaline, half prayer. Mine had been rehearsing that rhythm since childhood. Each time I swallowed a protest, it added another beat, another quiet bruise beneath my ribs. Tonight, all those small rehearsals came together in one steady pulse. The envelope felt warm in my hand, paper gone soft at the edges from where my thumb had pressed too long. My mother was still smiling, polishing her charm for the audience that had started pretending to eat their cake. "You're overreacting," she said, voice light as perfume. "You're making people uncomfortable." That was the point. I wanted them uncomfortable. For once, I wanted her to feel what I had lived: awkward silence, invisible disappointment, the room waiting for me to shrink. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You're giving away our wedding gift," I said again, calmly, like an echo that refused to fade. Danielle's lips twisted into a smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "You're seriously doing this here? Over a car?" Her voice carried, just enough to reach the curious guests, leaning subtly toward us. Behind me, Evan didn't move. He was a still point in a room full of noise, the only thing in my world that didn't waver when challenged. His silence was faith. "Just a car," I repeated softly. "Then why does it have my name on the title?" Mom's eyes flicked to Dad, and something passed between them, an unspoken order to keep the peace. He cleared his throat, stepped forward, and put on the same diplomatic face he used when apologizing to dinner guests for my attitude. "Let's all calm down," he said. "This isn't the time or place for—" "It's always the time and place when you're taking something that isn't yours," I interrupted. The words startled even me. They didn't sound angry, they sounded final. I took one small step forward, the envelope between us now. "Evan," I said quietly, without breaking eye contact with my mother. He slipped the second envelope from my clutch and placed it in my palm. I could feel his fingertips tremble for a fraction of a second. Fear or anticipation, I couldn't tell. He knew what came next. We both did. My father reached for it automatically, maybe expecting money, maybe expecting control. I didn't let go. "You might want to open it together," I said. For a moment, the room forgot to breathe. The singer's voice cracked mid-note. A fork hit a plate and rolled onto the floor with a soft metallic clink. Mom opened it, her manicured fingers sliding under the flap with delicate irritation, as if I'd handed her a piece of gum stuck to her reputation. Danielle leaned in close, her perfume sticky sweet. They read. At first, just confusion, then the slow dawning of recognition. The lines between my mother's brows deepened, the kind that only appear when her control starts slipping. Danielle's smirk dissolved before the second paragraph. Dad's eyes darted over the page, scanning too quickly, as though he could skim past the consequences. "What is this?" he muttered. "A notarized declaration," I said. My voice didn't shake. "It states that all wedding gifts, including the vehicle titled in my name, cannot be sold, gifted, or transferred without my written, notarized consent. Any attempt will trigger a legal review restricting future inheritance from Evan's side." Silence. The kind that eats music whole. Danielle's face twisted, half disbelief, half fear. "You can't be serious. You're threatening us at your own wedding?" "You made a public claim," I answered. "I'm giving a public boundary." A gasp rippled through the room. Someone's phone camera clicked again, another witness for the archive of family drama. I didn't care. For once, I wasn't trying to look perfect. I was trying to look honest. Dad gave a short, humorless laugh. "This is petty, Nova. It's a car, not a child." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, it's the principle. The principle that only ever applied when Danielle didn't want something." Mom slid the paper back into the envelope, her movements crisp and controlled, though her knuckles were white. "We're family," she hissed. "You don't treat us like criminals." "You went into our garage last night," I said quietly. "You took photos of the car and posted them." That did it. Danielle's jaw dropped, her mascaraed eyes blinking like a deer caught in artificial light. "It was a joke," she stammered. "Symbolic." "Symbolic of what?" Evan asked, voice calm but cutting. "That your presence is the gift," Danielle snapped, her tone brittle. Someone's aunt choked on a laugh. Mom's smile finally cracked. For a heartbeat, the whole scene went still. The weight of years pressed on my chest, but under it, something else was growing, a new kind of breathing. The kind that doesn't ask permission. Evan's fingers brushed mine again, grounding me. The room might as well have vanished. The guests, the lights, even the music fading into a soft hum somewhere far away. Danielle's voice came again, smaller now. "You've always been like this, self-righteous, dramatic." "No," I said. "Just done pretending that being silent is the same as being kind." And before any of them could speak, before my mother could summon another justification polished with grace, I pulled a second envelope from my clutch, Danielle's name written neatly across the front. Her eyes widened, panic shimmering behind her mascara. "This one's real," I said, my voice even softer now. "Not symbolic. Consider it documentation." Mom tried to snatch it, but I pulled it back half an inch. A visible, physical boundary. Behind me, the band froze mid-song, waiting for my cue. Evan whispered something only I could hear. "Dance." And so I did. As we turned toward the floor, I could feel every stare like static against my skin. But the air was lighter now, like something poisonous had finally been named. My mother's expression stiffened into a new shape, one she hadn't rehearsed yet. Danielle stood motionless, glitter dress catching the light like a fractured mirror. I held the envelope in my hand like a truth with edges. And for the first time in 29 years, I didn't feel small. I felt free. There's a sound a room makes when truth slices through it. It isn't loud, it's a tremor, a collective inhale that never fully releases. That was the sound I heard after I spoke. The band stilled mid-chord, champagne bubbles froze in crystal flutes, and every head tilted just slightly toward me, waiting to see whether I'd retreat like I always did. But retreat wasn't in me anymore. Mom's hand trembled as she clutched the envelope I'd given her, her perfect manicure glinting beneath the fairy lights. "You've lost your mind," she hissed. "Do you even hear yourself? This is a wedding, Nova. You don't humiliate your family in public." I wanted to laugh at the irony. In public, as if humiliation counted only when there was an audience. "You did this in public," I said evenly. "You made a claim that wasn't yours to make. All I did was correct it." Dad stepped forward, voice heavy with authority he hadn't earned in years. "You're making a fool of yourself. You think this makes you strong? It makes you spiteful." He'd said words like that to me before, angry, dramatic, ungrateful. Words meant to pull me back into the corner labeled good daughter. I'd spent my whole life decorating that corner with patience and apologies. Tonight, I tore down the wallpaper. "It's not spite," I said. "It's clarity." The crowd shifted, the air rippling like heat off pavement. Danielle folded her arms, chin lifting like she was on trial and already preparing her closing argument. "You always have to make everything about you," she said, voice cracking under its own confidence. "You can't just be happy for me for once?" "Happy for you?" I repeated. "You mean when you take something that isn't yours and call it sharing?" She blinked, jaw tightening. "It's a car, Nova. You're married now. You don't even need it." "No," I said, "but I earned it, and that's the difference." The whisper spread through the room like wildfire. I could feel the guests' eyes darting between us, half horrified, half hypnotized. People love a spectacle when it isn't their own. Mom's smile fractured completely now, the mask falling away to reveal something smaller, colder. "You're embarrassing yourself," she said. "You've turned into someone I don't even recognize." "I hope so," I said quietly, "because the version you recognize only existed to serve you." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Evan didn't speak, but his hand found mine again, a silent, steady pulse of, "Yes, keep going." Danielle's breath hitched. "You're not serious about that letter," she said. "You wouldn't actually—" "It's already filed," I said. Her face drained of color. "You filed it?" "Yes, 2 weeks ago." Her mouth opened, but Mom cut in, her voice trembling with anger. "This is outrageous. We raised you to be kind, not cruel." I smiled. And it wasn't the soft kind. No, you raised me to be useful. There's a difference. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Dad's lips thinned, but I could see confusion behind his irritation. He'd never had to face the pattern, never had to see it out loud. Danielle's eyes darted around the room, desperate for someone to save her, to rewrite the narrative before it hardened into truth. But no one moved. Even the fairy lights above seemed to dim, surrendering to the tension that had settled like dust on everything beautiful. Evan leaned toward the band and whispered something. The drummer lifted his sticks, hesitant. The singer looked at me for confirmation. I nodded once. Music returned not to cover the silence but to claim it. The melody rolled through the air like a reclamation, turning tension into rhythm. I turned to Evan and whispered, "Dance." We stepped onto the floor, moving through the crowd that parted like a tide. As we passed my father, I pressed the second envelope, the one with Danielle's name, into his palm. "Help isn't theft," I said softly, "and love isn't access." He stared at the paper as though it might burn. Evan spun me once, gently, the hem of my dress brushing the marble. Around us, the whispers grew louder, but I didn't care. The music wrapped around me like armor, steady and deliberate. Every step felt like a declaration. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother staring, her face pale and unreadable. She was already trying to craft a new smile, a new version of this story she could tell at brunch to make herself the victim again. But for once, she didn't have the words yet. And maybe that was victory enough. We kept dancing, the world around us dissolving into rhythm and light. I wasn't the dutiful daughter anymore, or the resilient one, or the fixer of other people's comfort. I was just a woman who'd finally stopped asking for permission to own her own life. As the song ended, the applause was hesitant, uncertain. I didn't bow. I didn't thank them. I just met my mother's eyes and held her gaze long enough for her to understand. The old script was over. And I wasn't taking another note from it. When the song faded, the applause didn't come. It just dissolved into a dozen tiny gasps, the kind people make when they're afraid to pick a side. My pulse slowed, but the room stayed electric like air before a storm. I could feel the weight of every whisper crawling against my skin. Weddings are supposed to end with blessings. Mine ended with witnesses. Mom's face was stone. Dad was trying to piece his authority back together, but it sat awkwardly on him now, like a suit one size too small. Danielle stood near the cake table, shaking slightly, glitter trembling across her dress like nervous stars. "You've ruined everything," she muttered. "You really couldn't let me have this one thing, could you?" I turned to her, my voice low enough to draw people closer. "You mean my car?" Her cheeks flushed. "You don't even drive that much, it's just sitting there." I smiled softly. "So, you decided to take it for me." The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, it was disbelieving. A few guests exchanged looks, caught between sympathy and curiosity. Mom stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Enough. This is a wedding, not a courtroom." "Then stop acting like thieves defending property," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Maybe because truth always echoes farther than lies. Dad snapped. "That's enough, Nova." Evan's voice cut through before I could answer. Calm, deliberate, measured. "No, I think it's finally just enough." Danielle's eyes flicked toward him, then me, searching for someone to shame. "Easy for you to say, Mr. Moneybags. You married up." Evan smiled slightly, unfazed. "You mean I married someone who doesn't cave anymore?" The room went silent again. That's the thing about confidence, it doesn't shout. It just stops explaining. Danielle crossed her arms. "You're both insane. I was joking when I posted those pictures, by the way. I didn't think you'd freak out over nothing." "You posted photos of the car," I said quietly, "from inside our garage, at midnight." Her mouth opened and closed. "How would you even know that?" I tilted my head. "Security cameras?" It was like a spark landing in dry grass. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "She broke in?" Another phone came up, recording. Mom's hand shot out, grabbing Danielle's wrist. "Delete the photos, now." But I wasn't finished. I reached into my clutch, the motion so familiar now it felt ceremonial. "This," I said, holding up a single sheet of paper, "is a notice of unauthorized access and misuse of personal property." We were going to handle it quietly, but since this became public, Mom snatched the paper from me, scanning, her face tightening with each line. "You're ridiculous," she hissed. "This is family business, not something you bring lawyers into." "Family business," I repeated, my tone almost gentle. "That's what you called it when she maxed out my debit card at 17. When she crashed the car Grandpa helped me buy. When she sold my old laptop and called it borrowing. You turned every theft into a lesson for me." Dad's voice was low but sharp. "You're making a fool of yourself." I looked at him, steady. "I've been sitting down for 29 years, Dad. You just never noticed." That landed. The silence afterward wasn't shocked, it was grieving, like something old had just died, and no one knew what to do with the body. Evan squeezed my hand once, grounding me. Then he looked at my parents, his voice calm. "We'd appreciate if no one touches our property again, our car, our house, or anything tied to my family's name." Danielle scoffed. "Oh, so that's what this is about, status. You two think you're better than us now." "No," Evan said simply. "Just tired of pretending respect is optional." Mom's chin quivered. "We raised you to be kind, Nova." I met her gaze, steady as a heartbeat. "No, you raised me to give until I disappeared. You raised Danielle to take until she couldn't tell the difference between love and access." That cracked something invisible. Even the fairy lights seemed to dim. Danielle's lip trembled. "You really think you're better than me now?" I shook my head. "No, just done letting you decide what I owe." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Around us, the whispers grew louder, shocked, delighted, scandalized. Someone's aunt murmured, "She's right," under her breath. A cousin pretended to sip champagne to hide her grin. Mom tried to salvage what was left of her image. "We're family. We can fix this later." "No," I said softly. "Later is how you kept me small." Evan's thumb brushed the back of my hand, and I realized my breathing had slowed. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was clean. There's a difference between rage and release. Rage burns through you. Release clears space for air. Danielle tried again, her voice cracking. "You'll regret this." "I already did," I said. "For 29 years. And that was it. The end of the script. I didn't need to win. I just needed to stop performing." Evan turned to me and whispered, "Let's go." We walked out together, my heels clicking against the marble, the music restarting behind us as if trying to stitch the moment back into something polite. But politeness couldn't fix what truth had finally broken. Outside, the night air hit me like forgiveness. I looked back once through the glass doors. Mom stood frozen beside the cake, her face empty of charm. Danielle clutched the tablecloth like a child afraid of the dark. Inside that hall, I'd lost a family. But stepping into the cool night, I realized I'd gained myself. The morning after the wedding didn't feel like morning at all. It felt like aftermath, the kind that hums beneath your skin, a silence so sharp it almost rings. The dress hung limp over a chair. The bouquet sagged in its glass like a ghost that had lost its script. Evan brewed coffee without words, the smell thick and grounding while I sat at the kitchen counter staring at my phone, knowing I shouldn't look but knowing I would. The first post hit like static. "Some people value money more than family. Hope it's worth it." Danielle Harper, timestamped at dawn. 53 likes, a handful of heart emojis, and the one that made me laugh out loud, Mom's comment. "Letting go is painful, but sometimes necessary. Still praying for those who forget where they came from." "Don't," Evan said softly. He didn't have to see my screen. "You're going to read it again." "I'm not," I lied. The lie tasted like old habits. He slid the mug toward me. "She's trying to rewrite the story before it sets." I looked at him, tired and grateful. That's what they do. Whoever speaks first gets to define what happened. "Then maybe we let the truth define itself," he said. We had planned to leave for the honeymoon that morning. No flights, no schedules, just a map dotted with places neither of us had ever been. The car waited in the driveway, clean and silent, the same car they'd tried to claim as theirs. Evan loaded the suitcases while I scrolled one last time, hoping for quiet, finding chaos instead. A GoFundMe link. Vehicle emergency caused by betrayal. Organizer, Danielle Harper. Goal, $8,000. The description read like fiction. My sister and her husband blindsided me on their wedding day. I lost access to the car that was promised to me, and now I have no way to get to work. I'm just trying to rebuild. Every little bit helps. 2 donors. $18. One name stood out. Karma. $10. Evan leaned over my shoulder, saw it, and burst out laughing. Karma donated? He said. You can't make this up. I smiled, but it was a tired smile. The kind that comes after too many storms. She'll delete it when she realizes people aren't buying it. And when she does? She'll find another way to play the victim, I said. She always does. We drove north. At first, the silence inside the car felt fragile, like glass. The city fell away behind us. Billboards, blinking lights, the echo of expectations. Then the road opened, and the silence changed. It wasn't emptiness anymore. It was space. Wind spilled through the half-open window, tangling my hair. Evan glanced at me. You okay? I thought about it. I think I'm detoxing, I said. From what? Obligation. He smiled. Good, keep going. Hours later, we stopped at a gas station somewhere between nowhere and peace. I caught my reflection in the window, no makeup, hair undone, eyes tired but alive. I barely recognized her, this version of me who no longer flinched when the phone buzzed. Evan came out with snacks and 2 bottles of water, leaning against the car like a scene from a quieter life. You look lighter, he said. I feel unhooked, I admitted. Boundaries will do that. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. The road hummed its own forgiveness beneath our wheels. Every mile, another layer of expectation peeling off. 3 days later, sitting by a lake with our feet in the water, my phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it, but old reflexes die hard. Mom's name. You're still angry. This is too far. Family helps family. That's how we raised you. The message pulsed on the screen, familiar and foreign all at once. I stared at it for a long time before I replied. No words, just a photo of the notarized letter and a caption, "Help isn't theft." Then I blocked her. Not out of rage, but out of self-preservation. Back home, the air inside our house felt different, lighter, cleaner. Every sound, coffee dripping, the hum of the fridge, our laughter belonged only to us now. The family group chat went silent, a quiet death that didn't ache the way I thought it would. I walked through each room slowly, touching walls, picture frames, counters, spaces that had once felt temporary, now felt permanent. Mine. Our home no longer needed to brace itself for intrusion. That night, Evan found me standing in the doorway, staring out at the driveway where our car gleamed under the porch light. It's just a car, he teased gently. I smiled. No, it's proof. Of what? That I stopped being theirs. He kissed the top of my head, and I realized something simple and terrifying. Freedom isn't loud. It's the sound of your own keys in your own lock, no one else's name engraved on them. Peace didn't come crashing in. It crept in quietly, like sunlight through a cracked curtain, soft, hesitant, almost apologetic for existing. The first week back home felt like a dream someone else was having. Every morning, I made coffee without checking my phone, and every night, I waited for a message that never came. My parents' silence used to mean power. Now it meant distance, and distance was mercy. But peace has a strange side effect. It makes you notice the ghosts that still live inside you. Mine came dressed as guilt. It whispered in familiar tones, "You went too far. You're the problem if they're upset. You should call them." I'd spent so long carrying that voice that I didn't realize how heavy it was until it started to fade. Evan noticed before I did. One morning, he found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring into a half-empty mug. "You've been looking at that same coffee for 10 minutes, he said. "What's going on in your head?" I tried to laugh it off. "Just detoxing." "From what?" "From obligation," I said. The word felt strange in my mouth, but it was true. That afternoon, we did something small but ceremonial. We changed the locks. The old keys clattered into the trash like tiny chains. Evan installed the new keypad, while I watched from the porch, sunlight pooling across the steps. It was an ordinary moment, but I felt it deep in my bones. Every click of the screwdriver sounded like a boundary tightening into place. No more spare keys under the flower pot. No more just-in-case entry codes for mom or dad. No more emergency contacts saved under their names. For years, I'd built exits for them in my life, convinced it was love. But love without boundaries isn't care, it's control. Afterwards, I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and cried not the cinematic kind, but quiet tears, the kind that cleanse instead of drown. Evan didn't try to fix it. He just sat beside me, his hand resting over mine. We stayed like that until the air shifted, until the ache in my chest loosened enough to breathe again. 3 therapy sessions later, I said something that startled even me. "I'm not grieving," I told my therapist. "I'm detoxing." She tilted her head gently. "Tell me more." "I thought I missed them," I said. "But I think I just missed being predictable. Their version of me was easy to manage. The fixer, the forgiver, the one who never said no. Letting that version die feels selfish." "It's not selfish," she said softly. "It's self-respect." That word hit me harder than any insult my family ever gave me. Self-respect. I'd spent decades mistaking it for arrogance. By the 4th session, I was ready to make it real. I deleted old contacts, canceled automatic payments still tied to family emergencies, and took the photos off the fridge one by one. Most of them were smiles that had never reached our eyes, posed forgiveness, polished lies. I left only one photo, the candid shot from the wedding, captured seconds after the truth detonated. Mom mid-frown. Danielle stunned. Me holding the envelope like a shield. Evan steady beside me. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. And honesty, I was learning, was a better kind of love. The messages started trickling in soon after. An aunt texted, "How's married life?" which quickly turned into, "You know your mother's heartbroken, right?" A cousin wrote, "Don't you think it's time to forgive? She's your mom." Forgiveness used to be my reflex. Now it was my choice, and I wasn't choosing it yet. When I did reply, I kept it short. Forgiveness isn't owed, respect is. The dots blinked on the screen for a while, then disappeared. No reply. Silence again, heavy, but clean. One afternoon, Evan found me sitting on the porch, knees tucked to my chest, eyes on the horizon. "Regretting it?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, just noticing the quiet." "It's weird at first, huh? The silence?" "It's not the silence," I said. "It's the absence of noise I used to call love." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He just sat beside me, watching the light change. A week later, I saw Dad's name flash on my phone, no voicemail, just a missed call. The number looked ghostly now, like something that used to have power but didn't anymore. I didn't call back. I didn't even flinch. For once, I let a door stay closed. The next morning, when I opened our front door to the sun, the air felt new, unborrowed. My shoulders dropped, and for the first time in my adult life, I realized that peace doesn't require permission. It only requires persistence. The letter came a year later, cream envelope, gold edges, my mother's handwriting elegant, sharp, deliberate as always. It waited in the mailbox like a test I hadn't agreed to take. I didn't open it right away. I stood there in the driveway, holding it under the same morning light that once shimmered off the car they'd tried to steal. Evan watched from the porch, a quiet question in his eyes. "You want me to?" he asked. "No," I said. "I need to." Inside was a single card. No photographs this time. Just 12 words in her flawless cursive. "We miss you. We love you. Come back when you're ready to be family again." The handwriting was perfect. The manipulation was familiar. It was the kind of message that used to undo me. Once, I would have read it 10 times, searching between the lines for softness. But I didn't feel that pull anymore. I felt steady. I stared at the card long enough for the ink to lose its power. Then I laughed, quietly, not cruelly, just with the kind of disbelief that comes from surviving the same trick twice. Evan walked over, his arm brushing mine. He read it once, his expression unreadable. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am." He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. I tore the card in half. The sound was small, almost polite, but it filled the room anyway. People think closure comes from reconciliation, from that cinematic apology that rewrites the past. But real closure is quieter. It comes from refusal. The moment you stop needing someone to understand the pain they caused before you decide to heal from it. That night, I walked through the house barefoot, lights low, the air still. Every corner whispered something different: memory, hurt, healing. I stopped by the fridge. The candid wedding photo was still there. Mom mid-frown, Danielle stunned, me holding the envelope, Evan steady beside me. I used to look at that photo and feel the sting of loss. Now, I looked at it and felt gratitude. Because that was the night the cycle ended. Breaking patterns isn't dramatic, it's deliberate. It's waking up every day and choosing not to return to the fire just because you grew up calling it warmth. For our second anniversary, we drove back to the coast. Same car, same road, same wind. But the silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was earned. The sky stretched in lavender and gold, and the ocean below roared like a reminder that peace can still make noise if it's real enough. Evan leaned against the hood, the sea light painting his face. Remember when you said you'd never dance again after that wedding? I laughed. Yeah, turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. Like what? Like thinking I needed them to feel whole. He smiled. You were whole the day you said no. The rest was just cleanup. We stayed there until the sun disappeared, until headlights became our only stars. When we drove home, the city lights looked smaller than I remembered, like distance had shrunk their power. When we parked, the house was quiet, the air soft. Evan carried the bag inside while I walked to the door. The same lock they once had keys to. The same door that used to open for everyone but me. Now it opened only when I wanted it to. Inside, the lights flickered on slow, golden. I looked around our couch, our photos, the faint scent of coffee that always lingered no matter how many times we cleaned the pot. I realized something simple and immense. I used to think boundaries meant losing family. Now I understood they define family. Because family isn't who claims you, it's who respects you. I turned to Evan. You ever think I'll talk to them again? He thought for a moment. Maybe, but not like before. Not as their version of me, I said. He smiled. Good. And for the first time, I understood what freedom really was. It wasn't revenge or vindication or the silence of no contact. It was peace. The kind that comes from waking up in a house that finally feels like your own, from unlocking a door without bracing, from starting a car that's entirely irrevocably yours. Because every time I start the engine, that's mine. Every time I step into the sunlight and know I owe no explanation, that's mine. Every time I love someone who never asks me to shrink, that's mine. That's family. That's freedom. That's me.